Hello, discovery session number 9, Tuesday. How was everybody?
Very good.
Good. I just went grocery shopping, so the refrigerator's looking real good right now.
You did your social distancing in the grocery store? Is it?
I mean,
How the grocery store is doing with inventory? Is it pretty bare?
I went to Sam's Club, and yeah, they make you like stand outside, like 6 feet about, and then they limit the amount of people in the store. But it really is kind of the same experience of going. It's a big warehouse. It's like you keep your distance.
Yeah. You want me to tell you something interesting, in my professional life right now, I can't tell you who it is because it's confidential, but you want me to tell you just something that like I'm exploring right now with one of the major mall operators in the world. So when you think about all the malls all over the world, the biggest ones and all the retailers, I'm actually working with the executives there. And I'll just top line this just so you guys get an idea of like what my world is like, but it's bringing spatial web, which is one of the topics we'll talk about on one of the discovery sessions, is taking spatial web technology to where you have digital objects that are powered by artificial intelligence in the blockchain. Okay, so let me say that one more time. Spatial web technology, Web 3.0, that uses digital objects, that is augmented reality powered by digital objects that are artificial intelligence smart contracts on a blockchain.
It's a lot of interconnection.
A lot of convergence. Now here's a great thing. This is what I like about this. Even you guys are kind of, pretty sophisticated young entrepreneurs. That probably sounds like a foreign language to you. Do you know what any of that means as far as the solution goes? That's what I'm talking about. This is what businesses are talking about right now. Now, do you want me to describe to you what that is, and you'll see how dramatic it is to a business?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Does that sound cool? Do you guys want to spend a little time talking about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
So this is kind of what you got to do if you're a management consultant like me, right? If you're a retailer right now and you got COVID-19 happening and your store business was shut down, you basically have, what's one of the negative implications of that if you're a retailer in terms of your future outlook of your business? Like what's one thing that's going to change significantly if you're a physical retailer, if you do a lot of your business at a physical store, like a mall?
Your inventory may run low.
Yeah, inventory is low. What's a behavioral change in society that's going to now present a lot of risk to you? What's something that's happening with human behavior? We talked about this on one of our sessions in terms of how education is going to evolve. But what's one of the things that's happening today that when we get out of this, life will be different? And if you're a retailer with a physical store where most of your revenue came from, you're really going to be hurting. And why is that?
People are going to be more careful. They're not going to want to go out to the malls and stuff as much as they used to before.
Yeah, so online shopping increases.
Say that again?
Online shopping increases and like in-person shopping decreases.
Bingo. So if you look at the demographics, like you might find a certain demographic that never bought on Amazon. They just never had a need. They never wanted to. Maybe they're a little nervous because they weren't familiar with the technology. Maybe they didn't even have access to get on technology to buy something. Well, they just got forced. They have to buy stuff online. Otherwise, you can't get access to certain things because of COVID, right? So you have people that maybe behaviorally preferred to go to a physical store. They never even tried online shopping. They always were a little nervous to try. And what they realized was not only is it easy, but it's better. Nothing's ever out of stock because I'm doing it online. I get a ton of variety. I've got AI virtual shopping assistants that will come on and talk to me and help guide me. I can Zoom in or FaceTime in my mom or something while we're online together. I mean, it's actually could be a better shopping experience, right? I can do Google searches and find best prices, all that stuff, which is part of the issue that physical retail has been having, trying to keep up with digital retail for years. That's why Amazon is coming in and disrupting traditional retailers like Best Buy. Like that's why Best Buy is basically going bankrupt, out of business, right? Barnes and Nobles, bookstores. So this accelerated, that was happening anyways, but COVID-19 accelerated like 10 years overnight. Because we're all going to come out of this and society's behavior will have changed to where people will have gotten much more accustomed and familiar with buying online and realize it's easy, it's effective. Delivery is same day sometimes. You don't have to lug any any bags around. Everything is working, and you get real good exposure. That's why Amazon's doing well right now. So if you're a physical retailer, what are you worried about? What changes in your value proposition when this is over? Especially if this happens again. There's a couple things that happen. One, you're not going to go to the mall. Why do you go to the mall today if you do go to the mall? Why would you go to a mall?
To try something on.
Okay, so to physically try something on.
For the experience.
Purchase. Have an experience with what? Like, is it just about purchasing at the mall, or what is there other things at the mall to do?
Just
Like
going
hanging,
around.
hanging out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
meet up
walking
with
around the food
meet up with
court.
friends, right? So the value proposition was, I go to a physical retail mall and to stores because I want to meet up with friends, and or try stuff on and shop and physically get a product, right? Well, meeting up with friends, especially with Oculus, the virtual reality, but even on Facebook and other mechanisms, is becoming easier to do, especially a younger generation like yourselves. You're getting more accustomed to meet up with friends online because you can do more. You can FaceTime 10 people at once. You can all get together in virtual reality when you start using the headsets. I can do that today with that Oculus Quest I showed you guys, when we talked about Palmer Luckey. I can take that Oculus Quest, which Facebook bought for how much? From the 19-year-old college dropout?
What was it, $1 billion? Something like
$2 billion, right? Facebook bought that, and of course in Oculus I can play all these games, I can do all these experiences. The one thing I can do is go, if my friends have Oculus, we can all meet in virtual rooms. My point is this: you can have a better social experience conceptually, or a good social experience without having to go to the mall, where before the option of meeting up with your friends was going out somewhere, like going out to the mall. So that's not the case anymore. And if it's to go buy something and actually physically get it, you're learning that value proposition is served to you by online, by Amazon, and same day delivery, right? You get a little bit accustomed to having to wait 24 hours maybe to get the product, but the reality is you realize that's not a big deal, especially with the convenience of shopping at home. So your value proposition of you get to physically buy things, try things on, and meet up with friends, that's not really a value prop for those retailers after this coronavirus. They have to offer a lot more. So what we're talking about is turning the physical mall, turning physical places into a web, a spatial web, a physical web, a three-dimensional web, which if you look up, and we'll talk about spatial web, but spatial web is a really big thing happening right now. It's what most technologists are talking about, because it will change the physical world into a website. So that way you will look through augmented reality glasses or lenses. You'll see all the physical world the way it is, but you'll see digital overlays on top of that physical world, right? So when you go to a mall, if you like animals, particularly if you like cats and dogs, you will be tempted to come to the mall because there's digital cats and dogs everywhere, and it got gamified for you. Someone made a game out of it, like a treasure hunt or just something to make it exciting and fun, right? And so the thing so that's spatial web. You get what the spatial web is. You get what augmented reality is. The digital objects are the dogs and cats in that example. With 5G networks, it's not just a cat that you see walking in the mall digitally. With 5G, because it's super high bandwidth, it's like 300 dancing cats with twirling and making music and everything. And it's highly animated, production quality, high definition stuff that can't exist on 4G. That's part of the benefit of 5G. So you have this tremendous experience, unlimited. Like you could go into a football stadium and 50,000 people you could drop 50,000 flying footballs across 50,000 fans and everyone could grab them. You can't do that with 4G today. With something like 5G, you'll have that type of scale. That's why people get excited about the bandwidth and the speed of 5G. So you've got the high-speed network, you've got the augmented reality, you've got the spatial web. Now I mentioned digital objects and blockchain, right? So here's what's happening. A good friend of mine is the founder of a startup and I'll have him come on. His name is Eric. He'll come on and talk. I was advising him in the startup for a while, but he's an extraordinary entrepreneur. You guys are going to love him. He's one of those, he's had, I think, 10 successful companies. He created a company that is, it creates digital objects that live on the spatial web, but they're based on a blockchain architecture. So what that means, you guys know a little bit about blockchain. We haven't talked about it in depth, but what do you think that means when I have a digital object like a cat that I can see in augmented reality? What's the difference of it just being a cat that I put in digitally versus one that I store the object footprint, I store the object on a technology, on a blockchain technology? Can any of you fathom what that does, what that means, or what happens with that? I was curious if.
I imagine that there's increased security with like so like the digital cat will, you know, is less likely to be hacked and like changed. So
yeah, it's more secure.
Yeah.
Another thing is, and this is the big deal about it. I don't expect you to understand what blockchain is. We'll have a whole discussion about it. I know I spent a lot of time in that space. But with blockchain, you've heard of Bitcoin and tokens, right? Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency that only exists because of this underlying technology called blockchain, which is essentially under the covers. It's the architecture that lets people have Bitcoin, these digital currencies. But what's unique about a digital currency is if I give it to you, Marco, you have it. I don't have it. You actually took title of it. You possess it now. Mm-hmm. Even though it's digital, you possess that unique ID that represents that token. And that means it's scarce, and that means it's tradable, and that means it can be, that's why it can become a digital currency, because there can only be one copy. You can't hack it and make multiple copies. And if you have it and it's not hackable, I have to transfer ownership to you of it. Now you can treat it like currency, because that's what is a dollar bill. It's a physical thing that I give you, and once you have it, it's the only dollar bill that exists in the world that's got a serial number on it. You have it, I don't have it. It's in your wallet. Cryptocurrency is the same way. It's a digital dollar bill called a Bitcoin or Ethereum, with, you know, depending on which crypto. You have it just like a real currency. You have it. It has its own unique ID. Now, who's keeping track? With a physical dollar bill, my eyes are keeping track that you have it, right? You show it to me in your wallet. With cryptocurrency, it's the fact that the blockchain is the judge and jury. It's basically the system of record. It's like a general ledger that's basically saying, this is the ID, and this unique ID is owned by Marco. Or Marco, you are giving permission, you're transferring that digital ID to Marcus, and therefore now I own that Bitcoin. So it's like a bank account ledger, and it just shows the transactions. But nobody can hack the blockchain. It's not manipulatable. We'll get into why. But if you apply that now to a digital object like a cat, that's an augmented reality, that means that it's the only cat that exists in the world, just like a dollar bill. So I could say to all of you, you know how we're going to get you all into the malls after COVID-19 is, hey, everybody, we just put 50,000 cats or 500 cats out at the mall, and they're unique. First come, first served. When you get there, you'll see it and you'll get it. And now you have it. No one else can get it. Just like a Bitcoin.
Like Pokemon Go with, you have to go get a Pokemon.
Like Pokemon Go, the difference is when you and I see the same Pokemon, it's the only one that exists, and I see it from my angle, you see it from your angle. If you go up and grab it, you have it, I can't get it. It's gone forever. You own it. And what a promotion can do is they can say, now that you have that particular cat, that digital object, it's in your wallet, you can see it on your phone, right? But it's blockchain verified. It's like certified by blockchain, right? Now it will change its state. It changes properties based on certain triggers because it's aware of the network. It has artificial intelligence that tells it, if the weather goes above 90 degrees, the cat turns into a coupon for a Ben & Jerry's ice cream. Because it's listening to the internet, it's reading the internet, because it's network aware, it's programmed. It's literally it's called a smart contract. It's coding that says, I'm a digital cat, I'm a unique cat, I'm the only one that exists in the world, and if someone captures me and owns me, if it gets above 90 degrees, or if the Lakers win next Sunday's basketball game, or if the stock market drops below this point, or if you do a social media tweet, whatever I can read off the internet, which is a lot of things, it does conditional formatting to change its state. So then it turns into a redemption code for $1 off an ice cream that you can go walk up to a store and redeem it for. You see what I mean?
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, Marcus, I have a question.
Yeah.
This is amazing, and I'm curious right now, because you know, with Fifth Sun, we deal with like digital products, and one thing that you know, with the creation of creative content, you know, you have to issue licenses and copyright and do copyright. You know, you have to do a lot of things to make sure that the content you create is yours and
Yeah.
it is yours. And so, are you aware of any like? Is there any way that blockchain is currently like trying to protect like copyright and?
It's almost the opposite, because blockchain, I don't want to get into a long discussion because we'll talk a lot about blockchain. The thing about blockchain, the reason why it has pros and cons, some people get very scared by it, some people really like it. The thing that gets people scared, but people like me, I kind of like this, is blockchain is, you can't turn off blockchain. It's actually, unless you shut down the internet, a blockchain is an autonomous operating system. Nobody owns it or drives it or can shut it off. And so you can build computer code, put it on the blockchain, and the blockchain is running it. And it runs because we'll describe how it's running, but I'll give you the short answer. I won't explain what this means, but you'll just realize how crazy this is. The way the blockchain runs, it's all these computers. Let me give you an example. Let's say a group of 10 of us right now all have our computers hooked up to the internet. It's going to use our computer power to create this parallel internet, basically called the blockchain. It's borrowing all of our computer power. The way you let it borrow your computer power is you say, you know what, you can borrow my computer power, but I'm going to, in exchange, I want to earn Bitcoin. And I have to let you basically get access to my computing power while I solve, I'll go into the complexity later, but basically you can have a little portion of my computer power. If every once in a while you put me in a lottery, and in that lottery, I have a good chance of getting some Bitcoin. So I get paid in Bitcoin. That's what makes the currency worth something, because it's in exchange for my energy from my computer. And so blockchains, and what happens is if 10 of us did that, and we're letting our computer be part of the blockchain, and there's 10 million of us, it doesn't matter if 1 or 2 of us pulled out. We all have to pull out to shut it down, and that's just never going to happen. You'd have to get 10 million people to all at the same time say, let's stop this thing. It's just not going to happen. So people are incentivized to earn Bitcoin by giving a little bit of their computing power into blockchain. What that creates is an ungoverned system that nobody can turn off. It's not owned by the government. It's not owned by a company. It's just the blockchain, which means you can then put programs on it that have no rules, like I'm creating currency. Or you guys have heard of Silk. Have you guys heard of Silk Road? Silk Road was about 5-6 years ago when blockchain came out. Who do you think was the first group to try to use blockchain? Considering it's not monitored, it can't be hacked, it can't be turned off, you can't be audited. It's not a controlled entity. Who do you think was the first one to adopt it?
Criminals.
Criminals did.
It's probably extremist groups.
Yes, criminals did, for selling drugs, for selling everything. I mean, so there was this website called Silk Road. It got shut down, but it was basically the underground using the blockchain to make transactions where people could pay for things, because it wasn't a bank account. You were just trading Bitcoin, but Bitcoin was worth something. Because Bitcoin eventually became, you could buy Bitcoin or sell Bitcoin for dollars, US dollars. That means it became a real currency.
Mm-hmm.
So people were using Bitcoin, and there's no way to track, there's no way to shut down, it's all anonymous. So criminals used it. And Silk Road was a big news story and they gave a bad name for blockchain, because everyone associated blockchain and Bitcoin with the underground, the criminal element. So that's kind of how things started, but then it got more legitimate uses, right? And Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies started. Now it's being looked at as a new architecture in which you run, it's called a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. That means you can create a company and put it out there on the blockchain, and it runs by itself and nobody owns it, but it does all the transactions for you. For example, what's a business that, because it owns the computers, because you own the computers and you own the software, you can take a lot of the profit and a lot of the value out of the model, even though you maybe aren't doing a lot of the work. What's a business that does that? Where because I own the computers, I'm running the software on my computers, I'm running it with my software, I built the software, I'm putting it out there, you guys are all using it. You could argue that maybe you're more valuable because you're doing all the work in the model. I just put out the software and own the computers, but it doesn't matter. I'm taking 30%, 40% of the value, even though reality, I'm not contributing a lot after that other than just hosting the software. Can you think of a business like that?
Google with Android.
Try another example. Maybe, I didn't think about that one, but try some other example. What did you say exactly, Chris, Pablo?
I said how Google does Android, like the operating system, where it's like it's a free license.
Yeah, that's an example. Let me point you a little bit of specific direction. If you think about how Uber works, who's the value creator in that model? Who's doing a lot of the work?
Drivers.
Drivers. Who else is a big part of that model?
The passengers.
Passengers. So the drivers and passengers are doing all the work, right? But Uber is taking a big percentage out. The drivers are using their own cars. They're filling up their own gas. The passengers are the ones that are going from A to B. What Uber is doing is they put the software in there and they own the computers, right? So they get to take 30% of the profit. They control it, right? Even though the value is the passenger and the driver. Well, what if someone creates a blockchain-based Uber where the code is free, it's open source code, and the computer, no one owns the computer. The computer is the blockchain. It runs on the blockchain. And all it does is follows logic. I use the blockchain Uber app to get you as a driver to come to me. I then agree on a price. We go to that spot, the GPS makes sure we get there, and as soon as you drop me off, the transaction happens. It's all automated. So you could create an Uber blockchain model that gets rid of the Uber, but just has, like as a nonprofit, just has the system working so the value creators, the passenger and the drivers get all of the benefit. And maybe 1% goes to someone that's maintaining some software. Maybe it's a collective group that maintains the software. It's a nonprofit effort with a bunch of programmers. I'm being a little bit broad in the explanation. If people were listening to this, they would be like, yeah, but, there'd be a lot of that right now. But that's the promise and theory of a blockchain computer. It's a computer that is a public resource. It's a public utility for everyone to use that's not owned or managed by anyone, and no one can shut it down, and it's difficult to even regulate, which actually has some issues, like with Silk Road. But that's kind of where that's why people get so excited about blockchain, and you hear about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies are just a implementation on top of the blockchain, but it's just one of 1,000 implementations, right? I've worked with a lot of companies on using blockchain to figure out where your food comes from. Because it's a computer that nobody runs or owns and it's a ledger, you could track, this is used for food provenance. So I'm a fisherman, I catch a fish. When I sell it to my supplier, I put on the blockchain, I basically register that I gave this fish to that person. They then give it to someone else. They register on the blockchain, they give it to that person, and so forth, all the way through the chain. So that way, if there's ever a problem, like it has a foodborne illness, it can be audited back on the blockchain because we all publicly put out there that this was it. And the reason the public thing is important, because I can do that with a computer system today. The reason it's important is nobody wants, like if I was Walmart or a retailer, I said, hey, I'm putting out a system out there so everyone in my supply chain, you can say what happened and where it was. Well, people don't really trust, people don't trust other companies sometimes. They're like, you know what's gonna happen? I don't wanna pick on Walmart because they're a very good company, but I could say, I don't trust you, Wall X, because if there's a foodborne illness and someone died, you own the computer, you own the system, you might go in there and change the information. So it looks like it wasn't from your supplier, it was from some other supplier or something. So there's a little bit of trust factor, right? When you say, hey, everybody join my supply chain model. Blockchain has been thought of as, well, maybe that's a solution there because it's a neutral thing. It's not owned by anyone. No one can change it. No one can edit it. So we all trust it. It's a trustless system. You don't have to have trust, as part of the model because it's inherent in the blockchain. Does that make some sense to you guys? You get a little bit of a picture of what the art of the possible looks like when you think about this new transformative thing called blockchain. That's why when you see people talk about blockchain, or technologists like myself and others in business, lots of nonprofit work. When I was at X Prize, we thought about, you know, like for voting, imagine voting systems being moved to blockchain.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of, if you go online, you'll see a lot of effort in all those areas. Coupons, digital coupons.
And the voting is interesting because there's a big, you know, I would say there's a lot of key players, especially in government, who are like against it. They're like even with like mail-in ballots right now going on with, you know, with COVID-19, it's like there's serious concerns about having physical voting, and so like they're exploring mail-in ballots, but there's like you know, there's a lot of pushback against that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the challenge with blockchain is a technical architecture. Once it's mature, because it's actually not that mature yet, it's at its early stage of development, but it's exponential, right? So every year you see major advancements. A good friend of mine, his name is Henning. He is one of the world's leading blockchain experts. He's phenomenal. He wrote many of the books I have around here, actually, but I'll show you one. He wrote one of the first books on Ethereum. I'll give you this copy, Marco, signed by Henning. You guys will meet him because he's from Germany, but he's in Playa Vista a lot. Henning Diedrich, but he consults the European Commission. He's a rock star. He's one of the smartest guys I've ever met. I mean, talk about a guy who I personally feel is just a genius. But he's a very good friend. He'll be one of our guests. And I'm telling you, if you guys, you want to be a young entrepreneur, you start to understand and master the whole thing of blockchain. It's not that hard, by the way, but people think it's so scary and nobody knows what the heck it is. So you can get a real head start on that and think of some really interesting things you can do. When we get down to thinking of business ideas, when I said, I said somewhere in one of these weeks, we'll spend time in one of these months of the section of what we're going to talk about is what are some good business ideas. But that's what I mean. You got to understand, you never would think of certain ideas like the digital kitties that run around a store and you gamify it. And then if you grab one, it's yours and it turns into a coupon if it gets above 90 degrees for an ice cream. That's the type of thing I'm talking about. Why you'll never have thought of that if you didn't know about blockchain, AI, augmented reality, and spatial web all converging. That's a perfect example of why you've got to have this base understanding of the technologies. So the goal with this program, let me share my screen because it goes back to, now you can kind of see the rhyme and reason with this curriculum, or I don't want to call it curriculum because it's not a class, but with these focus areas, you see why it's designed like this? You got to have exposure to what these things are and how they all converge. Because even the game mechanics that's on that, see the business model tools, game mechanics, that whole idea I gave of the retail example with the digital objects and the cats, that's one part artificial intelligence, one part augmented reality, one part spatial web, big data, one part blockchain, one part game mechanics, one part crowdsourcing. I mean, it really is a combination of all those things. And if you don't know those are your tools in your toolbox, you'll never have thought of it. But there's instant immediate, these are not future things. These are things you could do right now and build these things. And the consumer adoption is going to explode. It's just going to be one of those things where the next day everybody's got an iPhone or everyone's got a smart supercomputer. It's going to be the same thing with all this tech. Right?
Mark, I'm also curious, like, I know we'll be spending a lot of time kind of learning about the tech and the ideas, but if there's a student on, like even me, if you wanted to like start kind of playing around with some of these tech, do you have any advice, or maybe we can talk about in another session how we can start tinkering around?
For sure. What I think there's a couple avenues. One is, as we get into this, like these sections, I'm going to share with you guys domains or websites where you should do research and get information. Okay. And then the big thing is when I have a special guest, like when Henning comes on, you'll be able to ask him, like, Henning, if I want to tinker around with blockchain, where do I do it? Because it's free, it's open source. So you literally go to a website and you all of a sudden have the ability to start playing with blockchains. What Henning is working on, which I'd say this is confidential, but I guess it's not because we're recording this. But what Henning is working on is turning blockchain coding into a natural language so you can write it like in English, like a legal contract, and it becomes the blockchain code. Like pretty awesome stuff. And he'll share that with you. It's called Lexon. And I'll give you his book. You'll be one of the first few people that get exposure to this stuff, guys. But it's going to make it normalized and democratized so everyone can code in blockchain. So if you wanted to make something on the blockchain, rather than learning how to program and develop a blockchain, you just have to learn how to write a certain sentence structure in English a certain way, and it becomes the code. So it simplifies it dramatically, so a non-programmer or non-developer can use it.
It's like Squarespace for website building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just going to be the evolution. You just nailed it, Marco. Like, this stuff is so at one point coding a website was really, 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 really hard. I used to do that when websites first came out. I had to learn HTML. I had to learn XML. I had to learn all this coding. I liked it. It wasn't hard, but it's not that easy to learn. Now, you don't have to learn any of that stuff. You can get Wix or a website builder, and it's a creative process now, right? Blockchain is going to be the same way. So the more you know about it now, and it's already, like I said, he's already putting that user interface layer on top of it. So it's one of those things. That's what a good entrepreneur does. Remember the saying, the Wayne Gretzky saying? What was the Wayne Gretzky hockey reference I said before? What's the saying?
Is it follow the puck or become the puck?
It's not like the Force become the.
It was go where the puck is going, right?
Yes, skate to where the puck is going. Think about that. If you say, okay, I'm going to follow where I think technology is going, and I'm going to always try to be very near-term sighted. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to chase it wherever it goes, right? But my competitor, they're going to be like, pause for a second and say, you know what? I understand where that blockchain stuff's going. It's doing this. So I'm not going to go follow it like this. I'm going to go like here and intercept it. I want to go to where it's going. I don't want to keep making the same mistakes and do stuff that becomes obsolete after obsolete after obsolete after obsolete. I want to plan and future-proof what I'm building. And it's not that hard, and things are moving so quickly. It's not like you have to wait 5 years to get there. So this is a perfect example. Now I'll tell you, there's tons of effort going on in the blockchain space. I mean, it actually got hyped up too much because of cryptocurrencies, and it got a little bit of a bad name because people didn't really know what it was. They just thought this whole scam with cryptocurrencies, which a lot of it is a scam. But that's completely different than this architecture called blockchain. And it's very nascent. I mean, it's very early days. It's growing exponentially. It's developing very quickly. It'll probably look a lot different in 5 years than it did from its original vision. But it's just the future, which is, at one point we'll look back and say, why did we ever build an organization that could create a monopoly just because they own the software and the computers? Mm-hmm. There's so many things. Facebook is the same way. You could create a social network where who's adding the value on a social network?
It's all the users.
We're the product. We're the ones posting our family, posting our friends, introducing our friends, getting them online, creating content. We're the value. All the software is just creating that forum, but Facebook owns that whole, they have a monopoly around that whole mechanism because they own the software and they own the servers. Now, to give them credit, they also are building a lot of intellectual property and stuff. So it's no small task to make it that robust, but it eventually you hit diminishing returns, meaning there could be a version of a social network where it's all autonomous, a decentralized autonomous organization on a blockchain where it's all open source code that we're using to communicate and do some of those basic things. And at some point it will be. At some point it will be. And you'll look back, maybe it's 20 years from now, and society will look back and say, I can't believe we ever created these mechanisms where these giants became so powerful because they owned the software and the code, but they weren't necessarily having equal value contribution compared to all the people. They were productizing us. Mm-hmm. And why don't we just productize ourselves and keep all the profit ourselves and all the value? Meaning I, as a driver, get most of the money for my drive, and you as a passenger pay less than you would normally because we don't have to pay some other higher power.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So if I'm understanding correctly, blockchain, if implemented, and I'm sure it will be when it's implemented, like into like the real world, like in a daily use, is it gonna like put like companies such as Uber out of business, or how's that gonna work?
Well, look, this is going to evolve. This is going to evolve over time, right? I mean, it's kind of like what you did, Kevin. You know how you had a delivery business on your campus that you started that company, right? And you had competitors, of course. You had Uber
Yeah.
Eats, a lot of competitors, but you still did it and you found a niche. So I think it'll probably start off that way. You'll create a blockchain version of Uber, for example, once the technology is mature enough. And the next, I think it's getting there. And it won't have all the bells and whistles and features maybe of the Uber today type of
Yeah.
maybe on your campus, you'll have a group of people that are just like, you know what, I want to pay less. And I, as a driver, want to make more. So it doesn't have all the features, but it's got the basic features, which is the pay me from getting from A to B. It's got the Google Maps is incorporated into it, et cetera. So I'm going to use this app instead of the Uber app because I know it's, maybe you donate profits to charity or something, you know.
So it's another option.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I think it'll start in pockets and it'll start small. But eventually what Uber offers today will be a commodity. It's something you'll be able to build very easily. I mean, again, I don't want to take anything away from the brilliance and genius of what's put into some of these models like Facebook and Uber because they're very sophisticated, very advanced. But I'm just saying it's like the 80-20. Maybe 20% of the technology gives you 80% of the benefit, and that's enough.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Okay.
Whoa, my
Crazy.
mind.
It's crazy stuff.
that meme with the brain growing. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think that in a few years, like we're not gonna be able to recognize like the world and like I don't know how to explain. Like it's gonna be so much different because like technology is it's like advancing so exponentially. It's gonna be
and
it's gonna be crazy.
Like I can look at a lot of things that I think back when I was your age and think, oh my gosh, it's so dramatic. I mean, we didn't have the internet when I was your age. It was the internet, right?
Some parents.
I was basically about 20 years old when I remember this thing called the internet was happening. My point is this, it took, 20, 30 years later, I see where we are now. The difference is you guys will experience the level of change I've experienced in my 20, 30, 40 years. You'll experience it in your next 10 years because you're hitting the exponential curve. It's doubling. We'll talk about this later, but mathematically, empirically, if you look at the empirical data, your curve is steeper than my curve because technology, it gets faster and doubles and doubles and doubles. So you're seeing a doubling pattern that's way more advanced than where I was, which means the advancements that happen in my decade will happen for you in 1 year, right? So, and most people can't think, they think linear. I think to myself, I don't think that change will impact me for another 30 years because that's how long I saw it impact me for the last 30 years. That's linear thinking. You're thinking it's a smooth linear path. You don't realize it's an exponential path taking. And that's what's driving it because computing power is exponential. Computers are getting faster and faster and faster. So my point is it's very important. It's almost strategically imperative that you understand all these exponential curves, all this convergence, so you can peek around the corner and say, that's where the puck's about to go. I'm building a business for that because to be successful, you can no longer, I'm going to build something, I'm going to build it's going to take me the next 2 years, and I think I'm going to live on that for the next 10 years. Forget it. Those days are over.
Mm-hmm.
You got to learn how to be agile and dynamic because even something you build today is going to be obsolete in a few years. You know what I mean? And so a lot of the learning is not like memorizing and learning a craft like you did back when I was getting educated. It's actually learning how to be agile and switch your learning and adapt very quickly, right? And just being aware of your surroundings. It doesn't mean you have to learn how to code. As a matter of fact, I've told you guys this before. Sure, that's a skill you can bank on that you'll always have something to do. You'll have work, but I think the more valuable skill set is you understand these things and you're creatively putting them together. I think it's a lot of analytical and creative skills, not just coding and analytical skills. So if you're more of a creative type, maybe you didn't do good in math, maybe you suck at math. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I think it's good to learn that stuff, but you don't have to, that's not the value proposition much. I feel the world needs more creative thinkers that understand these technologies and puts them together, not understanding them from a technical standpoint of how to code them, but the examples I just gave you. You guys now have some basic notion of blockchain and we spent 10 minutes on it. Imagine if you spent 4 weeks on it, you'd really understand, and then it would be just common sense to you. You'd be like, oh, I get it. It's not that complicated. It's like an Excel spreadsheet, but it's on the internet that nobody owns. But it's a ledger on Excel spreadsheet that keeps debits and credits of digital kitties to Bitcoin,
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
These like large corporations that are making all these like advanced technologies, do they have like some sort of like layer of like like, do they think of anything that's regards ethics? Like, do they give themselves like ethical, like, do they tell themselves like ethical questions? Because I'm kind of worried about like some technologies that will come out and how it will like change the behavior of humans in general. Like, do they ask themselves those questions or?
No, well, so Noella, I know that you're into psychology, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, you have a big role here because the answer to your question is the bigger the company is with a bigger brand name, like the Walmarts of the world, or I don't know, any Amazon. I can tell you firsthand because I'm in those rooms with executives. They very much have discussions about ethics and morals because it's a responsible thing to do, because it's pretty serious stuff, because artificial intelligence, a lot of the stuff can have a lot of bad implications. And then the question is, sure, anyone can use this technology if they want to just get money from people and convince them. I mean, there was a Google engineer that quit Google. I don't know if you guys saw this about 2 years ago. A Google engineer left Google and basically said, I felt pretty guilty with what I was doing because I'm building games and I'm building websites or I'm building capabilities within the Google world that is using artificial intelligence to understand the way humans interact and what gives you an endorphin hit, what gets you excited. And they started to realize with the new types of artificial intelligence called machine learning, where the machines learn better and better and better on their own. That's called machine learning. We'll talk all about that. He realized it was an unfair advantage to humans, that you as a human can be completely manipulated by a AI machine that wants to get you to buy stuff or do things. It almost gets to be completely unfair because AI can learn and look at everything and understand you and manipulate you in ways that you never understood. Just like if you're a trained FBI agent and you learn how to convince people, manipulate people. Machines get very sophisticated at that, and it takes data to do that, and machines are very good at processing data. So that's a real concern. And a Google engineer left Google and said, I felt this is getting scary. Humans don't have a chance, especially kids. And so most companies, Google included, because I have a lot of respect for Google, they do try to put the right oversight into place. I can't speak if it's legitimate or not legitimate or how serious or not serious. I'm not going to make any judgment on that. I just feel like that is happening. But one of the things I did when I was at XPRIZE as CEO is I co-hosted at the United Nations in Geneva, Switzerland, AI for Good Summit, which really the credit goes to a couple of team members of mine on the XPRIZE team who really championed that whole thing. But every year in Geneva, Switzerland, including coming up in a few weeks, I can probably get you guys digital tickets to it if you want. It's called AI for Good. It's with the United Nations and XPRIZE. You can look it up. United Nations XPRIZE AI for Good. You'll see the whole summit. And it's basically taking all the AI people together, and we talk about this. We talk about what are the ethics and morals and how do we make sure commercial businesses don't take advantage of it or governments don't take advantage of it to build super weapons and things, right?
We actually talked about this in one of my psychology classes. I think what the worry isn't mostly about like not ethics as an AI, but at like human connection, because humans are like very like extremely social human like creatures. So it's kind of like, yeah, this artificial intelligence is like, how do I say it? It's coming in strong and it's coming in fast, right?
Yeah.
But the brain can only adapt at a certain rate. And it's like, and it's worrying to see that like, it's gonna come to a point where people don't see each other face to face anymore. People don't connect like in person anymore. People don't like have that like going to the mall and having a customer service that's right in front of you. It's just worrying.
Yeah, Noella, you're brilliant. You're so bright. You're absolutely right. And then, by the way, I'm very worried about that. I think that's a huge challenge. I mean, I have friends in my network that kind of think the opposite. They say, look, technology's always had good and bad. Even fire was used for good and fire was used for bad, right? So you always have two sides of the coin. And it's a very, very important issue. I think, I told you, the Oculus Quest, if I was a depressed person, fortunately I'm not, but if I was a depressed person, I might decide that's escapism for me better than a drug. Especially if you started offering me things that were easy to get my endorphins, like pornography and things. I mean, it can be used to really be dangerous, right? It can be very addictive. There's a lot of discussions on that. The reality is this though, and this is the unfortunate reality, I think, it's kind of uncontrollable. Technology is advancing. If I show you how technology advanced over the last 100 years, you'll see that you can't even see a blip in how fast computers have gotten in terms of its doubling speed. Even during World War II, 9/11, the Great Depression, you don't see technology taking a dip. It's just the way the world and life is going to be. Now that doesn't mean that we can't do things to educate ourselves, and that's a great profession to go in, to educate around. You can make a whole career around, especially right now, around moral, social ethics in terms of humans dealing with technologies, because it's a really important field, because no one knows what we're basically experimenting with our kids right now. I have friends and their kids are, I have kids, but they're adult kids. I thought they were bad. I have friends that have kids and they don't really even say hello to me much anymore when I walk in to visit, right? Because they're so glued to it.
Actually,
So, yeah.
you brought up the point that you just brought up, the fact that like someone who has like an illness like depression can use like virtual reality to kind of escape it. And I think that's one of the biggest worries, because at the end of the day, like even though they use the virtual reality and that like to like make themselves feel better at the moment, at the end of the day it might just make it worse for them.
What is it? What else does that to you, where you feel good at the moment, but then afterwards you feel it makes it worse? What else does that?
Drugs.
Drugs.
Yeah.
Right. So, but on the flip side, so let me counter that, but you're absolutely right. But the other side of the coin is, Noella, if you become a brilliant psychologist that really understands the interface with technology, which that would be a great career to have. And that is such a hot career to have, to specialize in that. A psychologist who understands technology. You might find out that you are so good at working with people to get them to feel better, that you want to scale your expertise, because if you can benefit one person, you could benefit 1 million people. Well, you know how you're going to do that is you're going to take your lessons and your teachings, and you're going to figure out how to incorporate that into some virtual reality headset experience. So it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing, because now I can't get personally with you to give me a lesson because you're miles away and I don't want to do it via Zoom, or you're busy, or you're booked, or what have you. So the fact that you put some solution out there as a nonprofit that lets me get the value of you and all your skills to get me out of my depression from a psychological perspective, not from an addiction, not from a gaming and all that stuff, but you just found the magic to make in a healthy way for me to get out of my depression, not to get me more. The bad one is when I get out of my depression because I get absorbed in a fictitious world that's just trying to take my mind off of it, which is what drugs are doing, right? That's the bad way. But if the good way is the virtual reality where it's you teaching me, but now I can have 1 million of you teaching me, you can scale that. So again, it's like fire. It can be used for bad, it can be used for good. You just have to get in the field. You have to start that movement and start that field, because I will tell you this, just like Silk Road with blockchain and Bitcoin, criminals are entrepreneurs. And criminal element will figure out how to use this technology, and they don't have any restrictions on them because they're not obeying any government laws. So if their goal is to get money or something, they'll figure out ways to do it. I've got a good friend of mine who, this is going to be the best. This guy is one of my best friends. I love this guy. His name is Mark Goodman. He wrote this book, Future Crimes. He's the futurist for the FBI. He was Interpol, Secret Service, LAPD, Harvard graduate. At Singular University, he was the head of the cybersecurity, and he also was the guy in charge of ethics, the ethics side. So Noella, you'll really like him. This is a best-selling book. He basically has documented all the ways that criminals are using blockchain, virtual reality, drones, artificial intelligence. I mean, there's a ridiculous amount of criminal element going on with this stuff. So, he's the one who's warning us to be very careful. You heard about the virus from Wuhan, China, and there's been some noise about, was this created in a lab, not out of a bat? Did you guys hear this? Mark Goodman, my friend here, wrote that book. He wrote an article in Wired magazine. It was the cover story 5 years ago saying bioterrorism, it's the new arms race. And he basically said, we're going to take gene editing technology like CRISPR, Cas9, that allows you to go into the gene of a bat, change the genetic code to create a virus. And that virus can even be specific to affect only people with certain genome. He wrote another article called How to Steal the President's DNA. And it was basically saying that the technology is getting to the point where the President of the United States should be wearing a resin on their hands, because someone could shake your hand, get a little bit of the DNA particle of the president, and then create a virus in a lab that would just kill the president based on his or her genetic profile. So he wrote an article. If you look up Mark Goodman, M-A-R-C Goodman, you'll see this article. He's going to be on, he'll tell you all about this, but that's the crazy stuff that's going on. So entrepreneurs come in all walks of life. But for the record, this program is not to be that type of entrepreneur. Right? You with me? Don't get any ideas. This is to tell you what not to do. You get in trouble here. So I'm being facetious, of course. So I mean, this was kind of interesting discussion. If you guys think this is blowing your mind, we haven't got started yet. And what I'm sharing with you, you're going to see once you get online and start researching it. Everything I'm telling you is documented. It's out there. I'm not the type to come and fabricate things or hype things. I'm just getting you some exposure to the way the world's changing. And you know, a lot of people I know in the adult world, the professional adult world, aren't even aware of all this stuff like you guys are getting aware to now. But it's all out there. The community I'm part of has been looking and researching, understanding this for years. But things are moving very quickly. That goes back to the teaching. Imagine a teacher trying to stay up with this stuff. Right? That's why I say it's going to have to require private mentors, like private citizens like you, Marco, Kevin, myself, that pass on this knowledge to others to help the public school system get people up to speed. I want to talk a little bit more about the stuff with the ethics and morals and stuff, because I mean, I can get myself pretty freaked out and actually a little depressed if I think about, you know, I have to be a little bit on the pessimistic side versus putting my optimistic hat on. But there's some pretty serious stuff. I mean, I'll tell you what, when I was at Deloitte in the professional world, a big reason why I wanted to go to X Prize as a nonprofit was I actually felt at conflict with myself, because I felt like I like helping businesses understand how to use this technology, but it was moving so quickly and it's so powerful. I felt that it was a sense of responsibility, almost of shame, the fact that I wasn't trying to figure out how this technology could be used for just purely good social impact reasons. And X Prize, that's what X Prize does, is they try to look at technology for solving big grand challenges. I'm not saying I'm a saint and that, you know, I drop everything and just go down the road. I'm just saying, the more you get into this, the more you just feel compelled, like none of this other stuff matters. We have to figure out how to make sure the stuff is used safely or used for really good things. Because some of the really good things this stuff can be used for isn't profitable right away, so businesses won't do it. So you almost have to have nonprofits try to pursue that stuff, right? So in the nonprofit space, not everybody, but most of them aren't very super tech oriented. You know, the Bill Gates Foundation is, of course, right? He's Bill and Melinda Gates. They're on top of it. They know the most leading stuff. You know, they're helping with the virus right now and everything using some very advanced tech. But you guys could think about launching a nonprofit that's very, very future tech oriented, and you'd be way ahead of the curve, a social impact organization. Let's see, anyone else other than the coaches, please ask questions as well, but anyone else who's on the line want to type a question, or maybe give us a thumbs up if you're on the line and you're not a coach. I want to know if this discussion is also helpful, because we winged it this time because we kind of got off on a tangent. I wanted to actually continue the discussion, Marco and Kevin and the rest, with Pablo, with you guys about the businesses you created. So we'll do that tomorrow. I don't know. How did we get on this tangent? You guys are going to notice that about me. Sometimes you just got to say, Marcus, get back to the focus. I don't know. Guys, give me feedback. Thumbs up on this thing or what? Like, was this discussion?
I think it was good. It got my brain going.
Good. It got you excited about learning, hopefully, because that's my theory is this stuff is pretty, when you hear about this stuff, it's so mind-blowing, you want to go learn about it, right? So that's awesome. I hope this gets you, I hope it inspires you to go look. See, what I want, part of our theory of impact here is that these types of discussions, I'm adamant that it will spark your interest, that you'll at least want to go research it and go read somewhere, because it's that crazy. It's science fiction coming science reality. I saw that happen with my kids. And then what I think will happen is if we, the coaches, co-hosts, Marco, you and I, if we can educate people that join this discussion, the people on the line right now, if we can get you familiar with it, so that way when you do go research it in an article, we'll point you to certain articles or certain websites to go read, you'll understand what you're reading about. Like if we spend a whole day talking about blockchain, just one day, 5 hours, I guarantee that any article you read from then on out, it's not going to be a foreign language to you. You'll kind of get it. You'll be like, I understand it. Because they're not necessarily, most of them are written, they're not technical reads. They're reads about how the technology can be used. You just have to understand kind of the scope of the technology to have some appreciation for it to make it sense. And then you can teach yourself, right? Just like Pablo, you learned how to get drone certified. You didn't know anything about drones. So once you got the vocabulary and the vernacular and you understood things, Kristen, you probably did too. I mean, once did you guys, I mean, then you were able to read anything and you understand it now, right?
A little more. It was a lot of like aviation stuff and like airport like codes and like all that like stuff that I didn't think I would need, but I know now. I could tell you, you know, like what you call it, MSAR report with like airport stuff and like what pilots use. It's like I'm not gonna need it. I could call into an airport right now and probably talk to them like I don't gotta know this stuff, but I know it.
Well, you know what? You might find out one day you did need to know it, you know? Or if you came up with a business idea, you'd be the one in the room that says, guys, I like the business idea, but keep in mind, I read one time that you have to do this. There's this thing we have to make sure we account for.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Lots of value there. Lots of value.
Yeah, I threw blockchain at you today, and that's a heavy lift that I wanted to do in a very premeditated way.
That's okay.
It's a hard one to pick up midstream because I didn't even use any visuals to kind of, you know how I like to use visuals to spell stuff out so you really get an appreciation for it. But you guys, did that give you some basic understanding of it?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, we'll spend a whole session on it and get some experts on it. And you guys will be advanced in this stuff. I'm waiting for some additional chats from people that are on that who are participating.
Yeah.
How can we force participation? Maybe we'll all have to put in $1 Bitcoin on the blockchain, and if you participate, the blockchain will give you your money back. If you don't chat.
Yeah, well, we have Emmanuel on today.
Come on, Emmanuel.
Oh, I want.
What you like? Sorry.
You don't want to embarrass anyone and call them out if they want to be anonymous, but.
Well, it was a really great conversation today. I liked how we did break off and start talking about blockchain a whole bunch. It was really interesting to learn about that. I honestly had never heard about it or like how it worked. So it was really cool to get some insight on that.
Cool. So you had never heard of it. I know Marco was a little bit familiar with it because it was part of the Exponential Entrepreneur. So Emmanuel, did you track with it a little bit? Not that you're coming out with an expertise per se, but did you kind of understand the basic premise?
In a way, yeah.
What's a question you have about it that was a little bit still confusing?
Kind of how, so you said how they use blockchain for like cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. How would you be able to incorporate that into like a regular business scenario? So like, let's say for Kevin, how he has his business, how could he be able to either use blockchain to either promote the business or use it as a way of payment? Something along those lines.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that when we dive into it. That'll become very clear. I mean, the short answer is that you and I could have a contract that we want to do, but we don't want to involve a lawyer or a bank to hold the money that we're putting into the contract. So the other has to pay the other. So what we might do is we might take a blockchain contract. We both stake our money, which means we put Bitcoin in because that's the currency on the blockchain or Ether or whatever the crypto is. But we put equivalent to $10 into basically an escrow account, into an account that is on the blockchain that we can't access, and it's going to figure out a rule in which who gets the money at the end. And so we could basically do a trustless transaction based on some event occurring, but we let the blockchain, rather than calling up a friend or calling up an escrow account or calling up a bank to hold the money and get a lawyer involved to transfer the money when they determine that the deal and the terms were met, that can be done just between you and me without any lawyers or without any banks, without any notaries, nothing, because we've automated through this trustless system on the blockchain, because it just used objective data to make a decision about who gets the money in the end. Does that a little bit make sense? And we'd have to stake it. We'd have to stake it. I mean, we'd have to put money up that we get back, or we lose that money based on what the rule was met. We'd stake that in cryptocurrency, because that's the currency used on that blockchain.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or I just confused you more, but we'll get into that. But that's kind of a short answer.
So Marcus, would it be safe to say that you're kind of saving money because you're not involving a third party? You're kind of just doing it like 2 people at a time. So kind of you're not involving the bank or that other person, kind of giving a piece of your money to them.
Yeah, I mean, the reason you saw blockchain really shake up the banks and then the banks tried to adopt it is because they saw this as a potential automation of their function. I mean, again, what does a bank do? Who's adding the value in a bank? The people that earn the money, the people that, the bank is really just owns the software and the hardware to make the transaction, and they're a trusted party. You don't think you think they're going to always, they're insured by the government. You think they're going to play by the rules.
Mm-hmm.
Well, essentially, if you can create a model where the technology does that for you, it disintermediates or disrupts the banking system. And that's, when you look up blockchain in the financial sector, you see that was a lot of the initial fears. It's evolved a lot since then, but yeah, I think the world will be completely different. The financial world will be completely different when you guys get older, and that might just be in the matter of the next 3 to 5 years. And when Henning's on, he's like literally one of the world experts. He'll be able to share more details about where it's evolving. But yeah, that's one sector that's changing significantly. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, let's do our ceremonial exit. Thanks for the participation. I'm going to share my screen just so we can end this in our normal way. Be back tomorrow. We'll use the same Zoom code. Thanks from the core team here. We got your back. Now let's go exponentially disrupt this. The infamous mic drop. Expo D Squad out. Bye guys. See you tomorrow.
See you guys.
Opportunity is everything you ever wanted. He's vomit on his sweater already. Mom's spaghetti, he's nervous, but on the surface he looks calm and